I'm Rufus Griscom.
And I'm Caleb Bissinger.
And this is The Next Big Idea. Today, 6 simple rules for living a long and healthy life. Caleb, I don't think that you and I can be accused of being perfect specimens of health.
Yeah, I would never accuse you of
that. Okay, fair point. I cannot be accused of being a perfect specimen of health, but I have made some progress, thanks in large part to conversations that we've had on the show.
Yes, conversations with folks like Tim Spector, Casey Means, Eric Topol.
And now Ezekiel Emanuel, better known as Zeke.
Zeke is an incredible guy. He's an oncologist. He's the chair of the medical ethics department at Penn. He worked in the Obama White House. He's one of the chief architects of the Affordable Care Act. And he's got this great new book out called Eat Your Ice Cream.
Love that title. His view, contrary to the health optimization bros, who we'll talk about, his view is that wellness shouldn't be difficult. It should be an invisible part of your lifestyle that yields the maximum health benefits with the least amount of work.
And to that end, today he's going to share 6 rules, easy rules, that will help you live longer and better without too much effort.
You know, what I love about Zeke in this conversation is that he's kind of a rascal. There's a sense of joy and mischief and rule breaking in this conversation that frankly agrees with me.
What Zeke delivers is just a no BS set of guidelines about what to eat, how much to exercise, why at all costs you should avoid being a schmuck.
There's also some great parenting advice in here, which I didn't expect. Zeke comes from a pretty remarkable family. His brother Ram has been a congressman, White House chief of staff, mayor, and ambassador.
And his other brother, Ari, is one of the most powerful people in Hollywood.
Zeke will share the strategies his parents used to turn out such extraordinary high-achieving sons in 3 totally different fields.
That's all coming up.
But first, some ads. Today's episode of The Next Big Idea is sponsored by Factor and Shopify. Head to factormeals.com/idea50off and use code IDEA50off to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for a year. Shopify gives you everything you need to sell online and in person. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/NBI. This winter, I've made a resolution to make healthy, fresh soups. Kale chickpea, Thai red lentil. I go to the grocery store, I buy the ingredients, and it just doesn't happen. I'm too darn busy. Then I discovered Factor, healthy, delicious food made by chefs, designed by dietitians. You heat it for 2 minutes and eat. What's inside? Lean proteins, colorful vegetables, whole food ingredients, healthy fats. The stuff I'd make if I had the time. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, always fresh, never frozen. What's incredible about Factor is the range of choices, all delicious. 100 rotating meals every week. You pick what fits your goals. Healthier eating, calorie management, more protein, whatever you're actually trying to do. I'm enjoying Factor meals, and I would heartily encourage you to give it a try. Head to factormeals.com/idea50off and use code IDEA50off to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. Zeke Emanuel, welcome to The Next Big Idea.
Oh, it's my great pleasure to be here. A real honor.
Your new book of health advice has a counterintuitive title, Eat Your Ice Cream. Is eating ice cream actually a good strategy for living a long and healthy life, or are you being provocative here?
It is part of a good strategy for leading a long and healthy life. First of all, let's get to the facts about leading a long and healthy life. Whatever you do, whatever the habits you're going to adopt for a long and healthy life, you're going to have to live with them for years and decades. If those habits are things that involve a lot of willpower and self-denial, they ain't lasting for years and decades. We know that our willpower easily fatigues, which is one of the reasons people make New Year's resolutions and poof, they're all disappeared by the end of February because you can't do self-denial for a long time. And so eating ice cream, part of an overall healthy life that you enjoy, is a way you can actually be healthy. That's the first part. The second part is ice cream is either good for you or certainly not bad for you. And almost everyone I know enjoys it. And so having it as part of your life is good. It's got good proteins. It's got good vitamins for it. It does have a lot of sugar, which is probably why you should eat it like doing everything else related to wellness in moderation, not obsess about it. Although I do know a lot of people who are perfectly happy. They're in their 70s playing tennis, riding bicycles, who have, their nightcap is a scoop of ice cream. More power to you.
Zeke, what's your flavor of choice?
Well, I had actually a book party at a ice cream factory, Dolcezza, in Washington, D.C., and they made 2 flavors for me, which I love. One is chocolate hazelnut, and then they made a super special Lebna honey candied pistachio.
Oh, boy.
Pretty fantastic. And remember, both of those have nuts in them, and nuts, in addition to the gelato, are very good for you. They're good on the protein, good on the fiber, and good on the fats. So these were all combinations, or what I like to call wellness trifectas.
It's the best argument I've ever heard for writing a book, that someone will make custom ice cream flavors for you.
Absolutely. That's a great outcome. I would guess that you're not advising us to have multiple pints of ice cream in the middle of the night.
No.
But I take it that your broader kind of philosophy here is if we build healthy habits, we shouldn't sweat like breaking the rules now and then, a dollop of ice cream here and there. Maybe you'd allow me a nip of bourbon now and again. That it's important we have a little fun along the way, because it would appear to be the point of extending these lives of ours to enjoy it as we go.
I think you're getting to the exact point that's in the book, which is, look, what's the point of life? Is the point of life just living longer and longer and longer? Or is the point of life something larger, including enjoying yourself and enjoying the richness of life? And by the way, if you do wellness right, you will enjoy the exercise, the eating, the socialization that is absolutely integral to living a long and healthy life. It's also the underlying philosophy. Someone said to me, this is very Aristotelian. It's about moderation. It's about being virtuous. It's about having habits that you can live with that make you healthy, and focusing on the larger good that you're going to do in life, whether it's, contributing to your community, advancing some ideas, making other people happy. Those are what are really important. And wellness is just a means to the end. It's not the end itself. And that's a very important message that I think has been lost with the wellness industrial complex. All these big fat books, whether by Peter Attia or David Sinclair, they make living longer the absolute focus. No, we're going to live 75, 85, 90, 95 years. And the purpose shouldn't be 96 years. The purpose should be those years should be full, and they should be enjoyable, and they should be rich with new experiences and helping other people. And that's the key.
I love that someone called it the Aristotelian guide. I had a much lower brow take, which was it's the keep it simple, stupid guide to longevity. Because some of those books you just cited, like Outlive by Peter Attia, the sheer amount of information they have crammed into there, and all the protocols and rules and guidelines, and take this supplement, but pair it with this other supplement, and wake up at this time and cold plunge at this temperature. It's frankly
Nonsense.
Overwhelming and leads to paralysis was going to be my point. But that's a sharper take. Nonsense, he says.
Well, the reason is, look, let's be clear. people have lived a long time. One of the people I actually study and I think is one of the most brilliant people ever in human history, Ben Franklin, did he know anything about the mTOR pathway? No. Was he one of the brightest, most engaged, most contributing people in history? Absolutely. At the Constitutional Convention in 1787, he was 81 years old. He was afflicted with gout. He had kidney stones, and everyone comments, the guy's mind was like a 25-year-old. He was so focused. He came up with original ideas. He was doing compromises. Okay, that sounds like the life you really want to live. He didn't know anything about mTOR. He didn't do one squat trying to get that angle between the thigh and the calf exactly right, the way Peter Attia has that picture. Forget it. You don't need to do that stuff to know about wellness. Aristotle knew about wellness. Hippocrates knew about wellness 2,500 years ago. I mean, Hippocrates has these long passages about, eating well and exercising and sleeping as key to a long and healthy life. Aristotle writes about the importance of socialization because human beings are social animals. 2 chapters of his book on ethics is about friendship because friendship is so important to human flourishing. That's the way to think about it.
Well, I loved your passages about Ben Franklin because I too am a huge Ben Franklin fan, and I learned some new things about Ben Franklin. He's certainly an extraordinary role model.
Something.
But I'm also a fan of Peter Attia, who we had on the show. So I'm going to take. I think it's going to be 2 against 1 here, but I'm going to offer a defense of the health optimization bros. I just want to pause for a second here. We recorded this conversation in January. That was before the release of the latest batch of Epstein files, in which Peter Attia's name appears more than 1,700 times.
Attia was not Epstein's doctor, but between 2015 and 2019, he advised the convicted sex offender on his health, met with him by his own admission 7 or 8 times, and the two exchanged numerous emails. Many of those exchanges, to quote The Atlantic, are mundane, but others are vile.
Attia apologized for these, quote, embarrassing, tasteless, and indefensible exchanges. He denied any involvement in Epstein's criminal conduct and said that he never witnessed any illegal behavior.
So with that caveat, let's get back to our conversation with Zeke Emanuel.
I'm going to offer a defense of the health optimization bros. One is that I think to some degree they have been a corrective for a healthcare system that's basically been focused on managing disease for a very long time, right? About thinking really systematically about how can we proactively lean into doing the very best we can with our diet, exercise, et cetera, sleep and so on. The second case I'd make is that for some of us, and I can tell Caleb's looking at me now, obsessing on data is actually a source of joy, right? There's some of us who are sort of like, who like taking pleasure in incremental improvements that can be measured. And hey, if you're wired that way, you may as well apply it to your health.
First of all, I wish you were right. It is the case that the healthcare system is focused too much on taking care of sick people and not keeping people healthy and well. I've been highly critical of the healthcare system in that regard and trying to get it to focus better. And, look, I think we don't teach enough wellness in medical school. To the extent that we teach it, we don't teach, well, how are you going to get a patient to change their behavior? What behavior do you want them to change, since you can't ask them to change everything all at once? That is a recipe for failure. We know that. So I agree with that. But Peter Attia isn't fixing people. He's catering to a super elite of 0.1% who can afford his tens of thousands of dollars in consultation and wade through a 400-page book that doesn't actually tell you what to do in a useful manner for most people. He is not helping 330 million Americans. One of my big problems with the wellness industrial complex, all the people you mentioned, whether it's Attia or Sinclair or Huberman or all the rest of them, is the wellness industrial complex. They are filled with conflicts of interest. They are all making tons of money on whether it's supporting AG1 or giving you this set of tests and recommendations to take this medication that they have a financial interest in. Rufus, Caleb, I'm not selling shit, nothing. I'm not selling people anything except 6 simple rules. Keep it simple and live. Peter Thiel is not changing the system. He's not looking to make the healthcare system more of a wellness system. He's not doing that. There's nothing in that book that talks about how do we change the system to make it keep people healthy. That, I agree with you, really important. I don't see him getting out there and doing one iota of that, maybe for the 0.1%. And I'll give you a little secret. They were already going to live to 85, 90 years old, and some, unless they got a cancer, they got hit by a bus or something terrible like that. They're already living a long time, and telling them which peptide or whatever, take rapamycin ain't going to make a difference. So that's my first disagreement with you. My second is, look, I am married to someone who got a PhD from MIT. She is very quantitatively motivated. I think everyone at MIT, you have to go in like that to succeed. So I understand there are some people, but it's not the majority of people, first of all. And second of all, to the extent that it makes you obsess about the data rather than obsess about the important things of life, I think it's a distraction. And let me give you my example. There was an article not too long ago in the Wall Street Journal called Competitive Sleepers. People who've got the Oura Ring, I see like you, people who wear the Whoop or whatever gizmo that they're measuring their sleep with. And one of the funny things I found in the article is, I don't look at the data in the morning. I only look at data 4 days later. Multiple people saying this. Why? Because they don't want that data to actually influence their attitude over the day. Plus, on sleep at least, I'm like, I get up in the morning, I feel whether I'm rested or not. And if the data says something different, which am I going to believe? My body or the data? Which there's a lot of flaws in getting that data, especially in sleep, because some people move a lot, some people don't move a lot. That just makes no sense to me, right? Similarly, I used to have a pedometer in the old days before the watches did it automatically, and I threw it away after 2 weeks. Every day was the same. It was 10,000 steps. 8,000 some days, 12,000 others. Does that variation make a difference? Absolutely not. Didn't add any additional information to my life that changed my wellness behaviors.
Zeke, I think those people who don't look at their sleep scores in the morning aren't getting as high sleep scores as I am. But I would say this: my pushback is, I think it's clearly the Oura Ring is not for everyone. I think Caleb threw his into the ocean, and
I recycled it because it is. Come on.
Or regifted it, maybe. You regifted it. But what I would say is, for instance, like last night, I had 1.5 glasses of red wine at a social event. I tried to have it early so as not to impact my sleep. And yet, my average heart rate last night was maybe 5% higher than what it would have been had I had nothing to drink, right? So that data, to me, is useful. And as sort of like a data-inclined person, I'm sort of like, okay, well, if I'm going to have a glass of wine and I don't want my sleep to be affected, I have to have it earlier.
I could have told you that with no data. We know that you need to stop drinking 7, 8, 10 hours before you go to sleep, because otherwise, yes, it might help you fall asleep, but it will disrupt your sleep so you don't get the benefits of sleep. And we knew that, by the way, without the Oura Ring.
Yeah, day drinking. Okay, we're going to have to move to
lunchtime.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But I will say this more broadly, which is that I think that like the philosophy and spirit behind your book and your outlook totally appeals to me, because I think we all agree that it makes sense to make a healthy lifestyle like practical, appealing. As you say, we all have limited willpower. And this whole idea that some kind of masochistic self-discipline is the way to a healthier life is a total mistake. What's really effective, I think, is to take these incremental steps towards improving our health in ways that are joyful, right? That we can build on over time. For many of us, it's a multi-decade process, right? And we should enjoy the benefits incrementally, take joy in the process, right? I mean, getting a great night of sleep feels great, right? Exercising actually feels fantastic once you get into it. Eating real food, once you actually start appreciating actual, real, nutritious food, is a pleasure, right? And I think that's to me is the spirit of how you're coming at it.
That is the spirit of the book. You've captured it 100%, Rufus. And what we have here is heated agreement.
I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. I've started 4 companies. They've each been deeply gratifying journeys. Here's something I can tell you: the lift, the challenge of creating an entirely new brand and offering it to customers around the world has gotten smaller every year. There has never been a better time to start a new company than today. And you know where I would go to start it? Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Allbirds and Cotopaxi to countless brands just getting started. It's easy to begin with Shopify's Design Studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. Shopify's mission to empower entrepreneurs and make e-commerce easier for everyone, it really resonates for me personally. This is a company that I believe in. Now is the time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/NBI. Go to shopify.com/NBI. That's shopify.com/NBI. This winter, I've made a resolution to make healthy, fresh soups. Kale, chickpea, Thai red lentil. I go to the grocery store, I buy the ingredients, and it just doesn't happen. I'm too darn busy. Then I discovered Factor, healthy, delicious food made by chefs, designed by dietitians. You heat it for 2 minutes and eat. What's inside? Lean proteins, colorful vegetables, whole food ingredients, healthy fats. The stuff I'd make if I had the time. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, always fresh, never frozen. What's incredible about Factor is the range of choices, all delicious. 100 rotating meals every week. You pick what fits your goals. Healthier eating, calorie management, more protein, whatever you're actually trying to do. I'm enjoying Factor meals, and I would heartily encourage you to give it a try. Head to factormeals.com/idea50off and use code IDEA50off to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. Let's start with the easy stuff among your recommendations. If you want to live a long time, for starters, don't be an idiot, or as you'd say, don't be a schmuck. What does this mean?
Well, look, don't take unreasonable risks and do things that you know are going to decrease your risk of either some unhealthy outcome or a foreshortened life. Don't smoke. Don't vape, because we know vaping may be safer than smoking, but it's still not healthy, right? I disagree with RFK Jr. You got to have vaccines. And by the way, the older you get, it's not like those are only for little kids, right? At my age, I'm not going to presume your guys' age, getting the shingles vaccine, super important. Why? It's good to protect you from shingles. It's even better because it protects you from dementia. Having a vaccine against pneumococcus pneumonia, against RSV infection, against COVID, against flu, all of those are good. Getting your cancer screening tests, I talk about that. And also when to stop those cancer screening tests so you don't succumb to too much probing that isn't going to prolong your life. And I have a long disquisition for men over a certain age about why not to get the prostate-specific antigen. That's my philosophy. I also present the other view, which is the conventional view. You should get it. I don't agree with that, and I present my analysis of the data. And then I looked, I was like, what's the stupidest thing you could do? And, I thought it was base jumping, jumping off a mountain with those squirrel suits, Michelin Man squirrel suits. Yeah. Turns out that is pretty stupid. The mortality rate is 1 in 2,700. Not a good thing. But there's something even more stupid than that. And that is paying $150,000 to climb Mount Everest. Really dumb. Why? The mortality rate is 1 in 100 of all comers. Sherpas, mountaineers, experts. And by the way, they're leaving your bones on the mountain. No one is expending any energy getting your bones down. And it turns out if you're over 59 years of age, your chance of dying is 1 in 25. Now, that is pretty dumb to spend a lot of money to have such a high risk of death, and all you get for it is crowing rights. I made it to Everest. So Don't do those things. And by the way, don't be president. President is very risky. We've had 45 presidents, and 4 of them have been murdered in office. That's a 1 in 11 chance of dying in office. Not good. And many others have been shot and injured in office. 8 of them have had successful assassination attempts.
Now, that's interesting, Zeke, because you are related to someone. You have a brother who is,
yes,
the newspapers tell me, considering running for president. Have you shared this with him? This might be important information for you to send down the family line.
He's seen the data. That's all I can say.
I could assure you, Zeke, that there was never any risk that I was going to climb Mount Everest, and there's even less risk that I'm going to run for president. But Caleb, on the other hand, he's the young man here with Daring Do. Either of those paths might be ones you've considered, Caleb. So I'm glad you included this in the book.
Yeah, you've steered me off.
Well, let me tell you, I don't want people to live in a bubble. And most people consider me a pretty big risk taker when I do a lot of crazy things, but I think the risks are very manageable, and I prepare for them. But I like to ride. I like to ride fast.
A bicycle, right?
I think you just and I've had accidents.
You broke some ribs, I think, recently, right?
Non-displaced fracture of 2 ribs. I also had a pelvic fracture. I once had, impaled myself on a I-beam of a road protector.
Boy.
It's fun. Being out in nature, riding a bike at 17, 18 miles an hour is fabulous. Good exercise, good to clear your head. So there are risks.
So you would say here that statistics are your friend, because
yes.
I, for instance, because we all make these decisions, right? Like I love to ski, and unfortunately, much to my wife's dismay, I like to ski through the trees.
I was
powder,
and that's dangerous.
Which is a different risk classification.
Yes.
I don't do backcountry skiing with friends of mine do, which is a whole nother level of kind of risk.
I've had friends die in that, and it's really tragic.
As have I. Yeah, no,
yeah.
That's.
I wouldn't do that.
But if we look at the data, I mean, it is so invigorating, as you say, to fly through a city at 18 miles an hour on a bicycle, or in my case, fly through the trees on skis. And it's a calculation that we all make. And I think you're encouraging us to make this calculation thoughtfully.
Yes, very thoughtfully. And by the way, probably for most people, the most risky thing they do is start up the engine in their car. Driving is high risk. And what I try to do is compare my risk of everything I do to driving. I think that's a good benchmark because we all do it. We do it reflexively. Almost all of us have to do it as part of life. And so it's a good baseline for what are the risks of everyday life. They're probably, riding a car. Therefore, there are lots of things I would do, and riding my bicycle on country roads is one of the things I like to do. And it's probably less risky.
When we think about lifespans, because I had this conversation with Steven Pinker, if you think logically, the opportunity cost of dying is smaller the older we get. So logically, we should be taking more risks, or as we get older.
I think Leonard Cohen said that when he hit 80, he was going to start smoking again.
Right, there you go. No, but meanwhile, if you believe David Sinclair, who's working hard at radically extending our lifespans, or Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, who thinks we may double the human lifespan in the next couple decades, it sounds like you don't buy this case that we might see really meaningful life extension in the next few decades.
Yes, I don't buy that case. Let me tell you one reason why. I was researching an article about when wellness crops up. And someone pointed me to a 1909 St. Louis Post-Dispatch headline where researchers says science are going to extend our life to 150 or 200 years. 1909. This has been a goal. I think Olshansky at the University of Illinois in Chicago has shown that the amount we're increasing our lifespan is actually going down, suggesting we're hitting the limit. And very, very few people are supercentenarians living over 110. Yes, we're getting more people to 100, but that's not extending the lifespan beyond that. The second thing I would say is, I don't know how many 90-year-olds or 100-year-olds you've met. I have met a fair number of them. Most of them are confined to chairs. They're not traveling. Most of them are not engaged in new activities and contributing. And yes, they might be pleasant with sitting and reading a book, although I haven't found many that actually do that much reading. Their life is pretty limited. It's not clear to me that's like a home run. We get more people to doing that. It's not clear to me that's what I want to do, honestly. I want to be remembered for the vibrant life I have. I want to be remembered for being cognitively engaged. And for most of us, that's going downhill after 75.
Let's talk about diet, which I think is one of the most kind of controversial and interesting topics for a lot of people. You say that nearly 60% of American calories come from ultra-processed foods.
Rufus, it ain't Zeke Emanuel saying that. That is just the data.
Is it fair to say this is a disaster?
Yes, I think that's the exact right word. It is a disaster. And the bigger disaster is the fact that young kids, it's about 70%. The experience of eating real food is not in their life. And they've got taste buds that are acclimatized to the salt and the sugar and the fat combinations that, big food manufacturers have put in. One of the things I agree with RFK Jr. on heavily is this: we got to stop eating so much ultra-processed foods. Totally agree with him. That's exactly right. Less sugar, less salt, less ultra-processed foods. Absolutely. We are the number one country in terms of ultra-processed foods. Italy's at 20%.
Wow.
It's possible to live a rich, robust, have a fully functioning, well-developed economy on 20% ultra-processed foods.
And the Italians enjoy their food.
Absolutely.
It's hard to make the case they're having less fun eating than Americans, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And how can we identify the ultra-processed foods?
Just read the ingredients. There are too many of them, and you don't know most of the words. The worst aisle, the absolute worst aisle in a supermarket is the aisle where you go down on the right-hand side, or one side is sodas and all the sugary beverages, and on the other side are the chips. That aisle, you have to avoid that aisle because there's nothing good in that aisle.
We had Chris von Tulleken on the show, who wrote this wonderful book, Ultra Processed People, I bet you've read.
Yes.
And he makes the case that basically anything in the grocery store that's making a health claim to you is probably ultra-processed, right? Because it's written on the packaging. And this changed my perspective. Like, I used to go and pick out the 7-grain, twice the fiber bread, which is probably incrementally better than Wonder Bread. But you look at the list and it's got emulsifiers and preservatives. And what we're learning is that this negatively impacts your gut microbiome, right? It feeds, I think he and Tim Spector would say, it feeds some of the bad gut microbiome bacteria, and it kills some of the good stuff. And we've only figured this out pretty recently.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the same thing with diet sodas. There's had been this conundrum for a very long time. There still is, why when you drink diet sodas don't you lose weight? It's like taking the sugar away. Well, it turns out that those artificial sweeteners are probably terrible for your gut microbiome. And so you're actually decreasing your gut microbiome, and you're keeping the sweetness that you want. So you're eating other sweet things to satisfy that. Not good for you. And I think this focus on the gut microbiome, as I say in the book, really important. We're only just beginning to scratch the surface. Yep. It's important not just for our health, it's important for our brain function. We're just learning a little bit about it. Keep yourself attuned to what's happening in the microbiome research, because that's going to be an important element for how to stay healthy, how to feed that gut microbiome. And I might make a comment in this regard. There's a lot of focus on protein. Almost all Americans get enough protein. As you get older, it goes down and you probably need a little more. But protein is not our problem. Our problem is fiber, because that fiber is basically the prebiotic that allows all those gut bacteria to grow. 93% of Americans don't get enough fiber in their daily diet because they're not eating fruits and vegetables. And that's a serious, serious problem for the microbiome.
Yeah, we had Sam Cass on the show, who you have come
Dear
across
friend.
at the Obama White House. And he said the only thing he looks at on a food label is how much fiber it has. So Zeke, you just made reference a few moments ago to RFK Jr. and his anti-UPF stance in these new dietary guidelines that they rolled out a few weeks ago. I'm curious to hear you sort of sound off on those guidelines. What did you like in them? What do you think they got wrong?
In general, I think the thrust is right. Against ultra-processed food, for more cooking at home, against sugar, against salt, for plant-based proteins, for more fruits and vegetables. All of that is, I think, really good, really important. And to the extent that he can try to push that with the whole food ecosystem, good idea. What I'm against is the focus on beef and beef tallow and that stuff. No, we got a lot of data, not good for you. Increases your cardiovascular risk, increases your mortality, just not a good thing. I'm against his attack on seed oils like canola oil. No evidence that it's right. The best oil for everyone, if you can afford it, is olive oil, extra virgin pressed olive oil. Absolutely the best, but it's very expensive. And if you can't afford it, seed oils like canola oil, grapeseed oil, very, very good. And he's wrong about that. The excessive focus on protein, getting more and more protein, absolutely not. 1 gram per kilogram of protein for most people is fine. If you're older, you might need 1.2 grams. If you're trying out for an Ironman, you might need 1.6 to 2 grams. But that's a very small minority. That's not the thrust of 330 million Americans. And the last thing I do agree with him on pretty strongly is whole dairy. I'm a big proponent of dairy. I think it makes you taller, decreases your colorectal cancer risk, decreases your risk of diabetes, which is why ice cream's good for you. And I think that's a very positive message. And all the research shows no difference between whole milk and low-fat milk. And this sort of obsession of low fat, we've gone into the, no, depends on the fats in there. So in large measure, I'm actually positive. One of the things I don't figure out, and I've looked at that graphic he's got upside down.
Upside down
I just don't,
pyramid.
I don't understand it. And, he's got beef at the top. He's got nuts at the bottom. Well, should I be eating some nuts? A few nuts? Not all? No, nuts are probably one of the best things you can possibly eat. So I think the graphic's not thought out. I was part of the team that led the charge on the food plate. We spent a lot of time. We worked with graphic artists. We worked with people who are attuned to behavioral economics about how to design it. And I think we got it very, very well. Could it be improved? Probably, but it's way better than the upside down, rigmarole that we now have.
You worked in the Obama White House. You advised the Biden administration. You advised Trump, I think, in his first term. It doesn't really seem like Americans are getting healthier. Like these messages aren't getting across. So what's going on? Why can politicians from either party not figure out how to crack this?
Well, look, we've had 50, 60 years of ultra-processed foods pushed on us from, the soda manufacturers to the fast food joints to the big producers, whether it's Kraft or Cargill or whoever. And they spend a lot of money on advertising, right? They produce cheap food. They advertise a lot. They get placement in supermarkets. You got a whole ecosystem pushing people. And then you have a few public PA announcements. Now, some of them have broken through. The soda consumption in the country has gone down, down, down. That is a good thing, right? Really good thing. Similarly, the red meat consumption has gone down, down, down. The other two things I would say is, this generation doesn't know how to cook. Even cooking a breakfast, frying an egg, making an omelet, doesn't know how to do it. I had a research assistant, brilliant guy, 4.0 at Cornell, who came to work with me. And, I see him with fast foods every day. And I said, Vincent, what the hell are you doing? Can't you?
Yeah.
He did. So I said, I'm going to give you a roast chicken recipe. Very nutritious. You got roast chicken, you got root vegetables, parsnips and carrots and sweet potatoes. The simplest thing you can make, and it's not very expensive. So he said, I don't have a roasting pan. I said, what the hell? You don't have a roasting? Go out and get one of those tin foil, aluminum foil ones. And then he goes out and instead of buying a whole chicken, he buys a cut up 8-piece chicken. And I'm like, can't even shop right. We got rid of home economics. Bad mistake. We thought it was sexist. Okay, yeah, put boys and girls in there. Teach them about nutrition and how to cook just the basics. Here are 5 dishes, all healthy for you to make. We've got to get back to that. We've got a full court press pushing ultra-processed foods. And by the way, we subsidize them, heavily subsidize the corn and the soybeans and the wheat, right? And we don't subsidize fruits and vegetables. We've got to actually do that. And we've got to train people on how to eat well. And by the way, the recent states which said, oh, food stamps, we're not going to let people buy candy or sodas with them. I totally endorse that. We should make them buy nutritious food so we're not feeding them on one hand. Society's not feeding them on one hand and then having to give them GLP-1s or manage their obesity on the other hand.
As I understand it, we consume too many calories on average with not enough nutrition. So, I mean, it's possible to be overfed and undernourished at the same time. And this is basically the condition that many Americans find themselves in.
Incredibly prescient insight, which is, yes, we consume more calories than we need to, which is why 70% of American adults are obese or overweight. It's poor nutrition. I don't know that's the single most important thing we could do to improve the health of Americans, but it's certainly at the top. It's in the top 3 or 4 if we could change our diet so that we're down at 20-25% ultra-processed food, a lot more fiber, more fermented food. We would actually have a big impact and decrease the total calories. We'd have a big impact on our health and wellness. That would also decrease our healthcare costs. Fewer heart attacks, fewer joint replacements and things like that. Absolutely. And one of the great things about GLP-1s, of which I'm a big fan, is this last year was the first time in decades that we have seen a decrease in the obesity rate in the United States from 39% to 37%. That ain't genetics, and it isn't a change in eating habits. It is GLP-1s, and that's a positive.
And would you say the GLP-1s are like an effective kind of first step towards improving the eating habits? But what I've found so kind of liberating, and I've learned this from this podcast, from talking to people like Tim Spector, who you know, and all kinds of great nutrition experts and health experts, is as I've learned more about, what food I should be eating, what I've found is, number one, the really, really healthy food is delicious. And number two, if you're eating super nutritionally dense, delicious food, you can eat as much of it as you like, right? I mean, you really don't have to worry about the quantity. I mean, as I'm thinking about it, like when I have in front of me a really nutritious, healthy food, the more of it that I eat, the less likely I am to be tempted by the chips or whatever later on in the day. So I just sort of have at it. Is that a fair philosophy?
Yes, I think it is fair. And also one of the things we know is that these glucose spikes created by a lot of the ultra-processed food is bad for you because it shoots your glucose up and then it goes down. You feel terrible and then you eat more. And it's a very bad, vicious cycle. Whereas one of the advantages of eating a lot of nutritious food with fiber, with protein, is it keeps you even, and it keeps you even for a very long period of time. So my regular breakfast is 1.5 to 2 eggs, depends on how I'm cooking the eggs, with a piece of whole wheat bread, yogurt on berries with granola and hemp hearts. So I've got the fermented food, I've got a lot of protein, I've got the fiber in there, and I can go 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon without eating again because I'm actually feeling full the whole time. And that's a very different way of eating than you get Eggo waffles, you pop them in, you put a bunch of syrup on, you shoot your glucose way up, and then it crashes and you're feeling terrible. And so you have to have an 11 o'clock snack, and then you have to have a 1 o'clock lunch. And it's very different. And I think your perception, right, is that we have too much junk food, right? That just makes us want to consume more junk food rather than nutritious food, which makes you have satiety and full and carries you on for hours.
So for the average person listening who's interested in embarking on this journey to eating healthier food, you would say, we're talking earlier about how we all have limited willpower, and there's this incremental process of improving our habits, right? So I think you would say, take one thing at a time. Maybe you start by removing sugary beverages. Is that where you'd start? What would your advice be for your average listener?
There are 4 things that I would start with. I wouldn't do them all once. I'd do them sequentially. If you like sugary beverages like sodas, reduce them and try to get to 0. Then reduce the packaged snacks, cookies, pretzels, whatever. Those are the 2 negatives. Those are the 2 stop doings. The two positives, I would say, the first one is fermented food. Yogurt, cottage cheese, kefir on the dairy side, kimchi. We happen to like fermented carrots and beets. Those have good bacteria, good for the microbiome, and eat them. I have yogurt and kefir almost every morning. And then the last one is more fiber. And here I recommend, this is my schedule, but have some in the morning, some fruit in the morning, some whole grain in the morning. And we have a salad every evening, a very rich salad. That is a way of increasing your fiber and getting it up. So important to your microbiome. So those are the 4 things I would do. Of course, there's many, many, many more things you could do, but keeping it simple, stupid, those are the 4 things.
In the last 3 or 4 years, I really have shifted to almost completely cutting out the ultra-processed foods. My own experience has been I enjoy food more, I have more energy, and I feel like my immune system's stronger. It just feels like all upside.
I agree with you. I don't know that there is a downside to eating better. And if you eat with other people, you socialize around eating, all the better. Let me give you one crazy thing that if you're a sort of epidemiology type and you like numbers. So we always talk about in America disparities and, we talk about racial minorities and compare them to whites and shorter lifespan and all sorts of health problems. Turns out that if you look at Hispanics compared to whites, they live longer, less cardiovascular disease. The only area where they seem to have worse outcomes is related to infant mortality and pregnancy. But in general, despite the fact that they're not as rich on average as whites and other things, Hispanics actually do well. And one of the big reasons is think about the diet, refried beans, plant proteins, and they eat socially way more than any other countries in the world. So people come from Hispanic cultures. Hispanic cultures have the highest communal eating. 8 out of 21 meals a week are consumed with other people and socialize. And that carries over into American when they immigrate to the United States. You can learn a lot from seeing how other people live a healthy and long life.
Social eating makes me think of red wine. This may be a personal association I have here. And you're not quite as lenient on this topic, Zeke, as I might like. What's your advice on alcohol?
So first of all, I'm a realist about alcohol. 65% of Americans drink alcohol. I am a teetotaler, but many people I know like alcohol. We're not going to zero. We should recognize on the, just the physical side, its impact on liver and cirrhosis and those problems. Its impact on cancer highly increases the risk of 7 different kinds of cancers, esophageal cancer, breast cancer. It also disrupts sleep, has other negative effects, accelerates dementia. So on that domain, not good. But as you point out, drinking with others in a social situation where it sort of lubricates social interaction, that's a strong positive. So you have to, again, I don't want to be a taskmaster that you have to cut it out of your diet. It's just not going to happen. So let's do it right. So what's doing it right mean? Limit yourself to 3 or 4 drinks a week, no binge drinking, no drinking 5 or 6 or all the 4 drinks in one sitting, right? And no drinking alone where you're drowning your sorrows out and you're not socializing. You're not using it to actually get the positives. Yeah, that's the way to balance it out. This is another place where Americans are actually going down. Our consumption of alcohol has been decreasing, probably because our use of pot is increasing, but dropping the alcohol consumption is a good.
Well, why don't we move on to exercise, which is another really, really important topic here. What are your recommendations on exercise?
Well, look, you have to get the 3 different kinds of exercise. The aerobic exercise, getting your heart rate up, your breathing up. Strength training, especially after 55, 60, because we really do lose 6 to 8% of our muscle mass per decade. And so you got to actually strength train to minimize that loss. And then flexibility and balance. Yoga is the best way to solve that problem. And, I think maybe it's just the way I was raised. I think exercise is one of those things you should take pleasure in. It's a way of getting all the benefits together. You can increase your heart rate. You can stress your muscles and your bones in the right way. You can make it social by running with someone or biking with someone or walking with someone, hiking with someone. I find it enormously pleasurable, especially biking. That's my major sport. But I wake up every morning and the first thing I do is 20 minutes of yoga. I find it limbers me up and a great way to start the day. But here is the point. You have to do exercise that you can fit into your life, that you can make a habit. Peter Attia recommends 10 hours a week. I don't know. For most people, that ain't cutting it. They don't have 10 hours a week to do it. Plus, there's a plateau, as I say in the book, to how much exercise will actually benefit you. And it's under 10 hours a week, I assure you. But, for me, I can do 20 minutes every morning. And then if it's wintertime like now, I do 3 or 4 times a week, 20 minutes on a stationary bike. When it's summertime, I go out for an hour and a half twice a week to ride in nature and ride with someone else. It's very rejuvenating, and exercise should be rejuvenating to most people. And it has multiple benefits.
This diminishing returns that you report, this is among the many things I love about your book, is that I think an alternative subtitle might have been Health Tips for Non-Masochists, right? Because I am not a masochist. I'm not a masochist, but I do want to get, we all want to be healthy. And I think you're saying that something like, 20 to 30 minutes a day of vigorous exercise would appear to be plenty.
Yes.
And we really have diminishing returns thereafter.
Yeah. It doesn't increase your longevity, and it puts you at higher risk for repetitive motion injuries, tennis elbows, damaging to your knees or hips. So it's not a good thing to get too much. And the other thing is, think about all the other things you could be doing with that time, whether reading a book, spending time with other people, puttering around in your a woodshed, making something. Yeah, there's lots of other things in life besides exercise. I think you should enjoy it. You should have it. It should be part of your habits, but it shouldn't dominate everything else.
So sleeping, I think your advice is pretty sensible, which is do it. Like sleeping is a good idea.
I think actually one of the most important realizations is it's the one wellness activity behavior you cannot will yourself to do. You can will yourself to exercise. You can will yourself to eat better. You can will yourself to talk to people. You cannot will yourself to sleep. You get into bed and you say, I want to sleep. I want to sleep. It's guaranteed to keep you up. So all you can do is make the room conducive. You shouldn't take all those drugs. They don't help, whether it's melatonin or some other schmutz you've got. Only cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia works. You really have to go to bed at the same time, stop with the screens an hour before you go to bed. Those are the things that help.
And buy a sleep tracker.
Yeah, only
sorry,
for you, Rufus.
I was just squeezing that in there. In my case, what I did, another thing I did learn from my Oura Ring is that if I want to get 7.5 hours of sleep, I actually have to allocate like 8.5. Because what happens is I end up like actually getting in bed 10 minutes later than I thought. Then it takes 15 minutes to fall asleep, and it's like previously I wasn't doing the math right before. It's clearly a problem that you two are not having.
Well, I think it's important, though, like, as you said, you can't will yourself to sleep, but you can will yourself to prioritize sleep hygiene, right? You can say, I'm not going to watch that next episode of the Netflix show. I'm not going to have that last glass of wine. I'm not going to bring my phone to bed with me. Like, you can do these things that will improve your sleep quality, and those you can make active decisions around those.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And I personally, I put the phone in another room. And I actually end the night by reading real live books like those behind me and flipping the pages because you don't want those screens in your face. And it's not a good thing.
And you dedicate a whole chapter to staying mentally sharp. Don't be a dimwit, you say. And clearly, actually, getting a good night's sleep is one step
Part
in
of
that direction.
Yeah.
What else can we do to remain mentally sharp?
Well, almost all the wellness activities, socialization, exercise, eating well, all better for your mental focus. The other important thing is for people to recognize is cognitive reserve. That is, how many connections you have between your brain cells and your neurons, really, really important. And that means that more education is really good for you. We tend to measure the benefit of education in terms of financial returns, but there's actually cognitive returns to more education. The other thing is to actually do serious studying even when you're an adult. And I think a lot of people forget that, challenge yourself with something new, something you have to learn, and stick to it. Those are all really important things. Some people like to learn a new instrument or learn a new language or, volunteer somewhere to sort of learn something new. This year, I'm taking up ballroom dancing.
I love it.
Now, the other thing you say about staying mentally sharp, Zeke, is you advise people not to retire.
Yeah.
Which, as someone who's 34, I think that means I'm looking at another 60 odd years. I mean, as much as I enjoy my job, that's a long time. So what's the case against retirement?
There's a lot of data that right around retirement, people can fall off a cliff a little bit in terms of mental focus. And the exact reason is somewhat contested. But, retirement has you on a schedule. Retirement makes you socialize with other people. Retirement often means you're challenged and you have to solve problems.
Work has you on a schedule. Yeah.
And someone else is also depending upon you, so you feel more responsible. When those things go away, and usually the biggest one, I've talked to a lot of people who've retired recently, usually the biggest one is their social network disappears because a lot of it's based upon work. You can recreate all of that, but most people don't when they retire think of they're going to relax, so they stay in bed later. They don't actually have obligations. That's what's really ends up being bad for you. And one of the most persuasive studies for me is a study that was done by the Rand Corporation in LA and an economist there. And she looked at countries and their retirement age and when most people stopped working full time. And what it says is that countries where people stop working younger actually have more rapid cognitive decline than places, it turns out, like the United States and Switzerland, where people tend to work later and further into their old age. And that's a pretty persuasive data as far as I'm concerned. Now, not every study shows the same thing, and it depends. Some data suggests it's different for blue-collar workers than for white-collar workers, that, in fact, blue-collar workers might not have the same loss if they retire because of the wear and tear on their body, the stress. So, I think not retiring is kind of a little tongue-in-cheek, but if you do retire, you have to actually plan it so that you can keep engaged mentally, socially, all sorts of ways.
A through line through so much of what you focus on is relationships, which I think you would say if you had to pick one, if you had to pick one of these 6 rules, right, it would be relationship for both our health and our happiness. What do we need to do?
We need to have close friends. We need to dine with close friends. And we need to have what are called weak social interactions. That is, casual interactions with people we don't necessarily know, but that we happen to be around. The other week, I was flying into Boston to give a talk, and there was a lady sitting next to me, and I asked her, so, you're going to Boston for work, or you're going to Boston because it's where you live? She said it's where she lived. And I said, so where is it? I know the Boston area pretty well. She said, well, I live in Gloucester, which is north and on the coast. And I said, what do you do there? And she pointed out that she started planting public spaces and empty lots with flowers a few years ago, raised money for it. And it's become a big thing in Gloucester. People in the spring drive to Gloucester to see all the plantings. It was fascinating talk, casual conversation by opening question of, you live in Boston or you're going there for business? We underplay the value of these relationships. We're often afraid, well, it'll be boring. I won't have anything to say. Simple questions. They're not complicated.
Yeah.
And they enrich your day and they enrich the other person. And so it's a win-win.
Did you learn this from your father? And can you tell us about your dad?
He loved people. He was one of these people. He was a pediatrician, and he just loved to talk to people, and he loved to talk to kids to find out what they were thinking, what they thought of the world. And wherever we went, he would start conversations with people because he wasn't shy. Sometimes that even led to us being, as a whole family, invited over to dinner at people's houses spontaneously. Once he was on a train from Cincinnati going north, and he had no place to stay in Canada. And he befriended a couple on the train, and they ended up putting him up for 2 weeks in Canada. Who does that? But that's the kind of person he was. Now, as a kid, it always embarrassed me. What's he doing?
Yeah.
But you learn a lot. And the other thing you learn is people also like talking. They're also shy. They're also hesitant. But if you start, they will positively respond. And guess what? It doesn't always work. Sometimes you get someone who's like monosyllabic. They want to rest. They want to do their work. They have something else on their mind. Okay, I haven't lost anything. No harm done here. So I think all of that is really important for us to remember.
You and your two brothers are quite extraordinary. It has been noted, right? Your brother Ram has been a congressman, White House chief of staff, mayor of Chicago. Your brother Ari is a Hollywood mogul. And you've accomplished a few things yourself. Do you see your father's example about sort of breaking down the barriers between himself and other people and engaging with people and being proactive? Do you think that was a bit like a substantial part of what enabled you all to achieve what you've achieved in three totally different fields?
Yes and no. He definitely taught us a lot about speaking our mind, being very active, and trying to do good in the world. But so did my mom. And I would say that there were probably 2 or 3 fundamental things that we all learned. The first one was my mom was very, very committed to social justice. She was heavily involved in the civil rights movement in the late 50s and early 60s, one of the first white people in Chicago. And that was really influential. And then way before the rest of the country was against the Vietnam War, took us to lots of demonstrations. So being socially engaged, trying to do good in the world, very important. The second thing is my mom was the antithesis of a helicopter mom. She would shoo us out of the house and say, go play, figure it out, be back at 5. And she had utter faith that we would figure it out. We would get engaged in something and that we would have to negotiate. We would have to figure out what the project was. We would have to work with other kids. And that, I think, was super important to our ability to work with other people, to be social, and to not have someone over us telling us what to do and making it all easy for us. Plenty of arguments. We got into plenty of fights, believe me, plenty of fights, but we had to take initiative on our own. And I'd say that the third thing is my parents were very conscious of making us each other's best friends. So we slept in the same bedroom for many, many years, and we had to negotiate that too. And I used to joke that, we never went to bed until there was blood on the ground. We were fighting all the time. Now, I don't know, I've gotten 3 calls from my brother today, another email. He wants to talk tomorrow. We talk to each other all the time. Ram emailed yesterday, I need a book to read. What got a suggestions? That kind of closeness, I think, was bred by putting us in the same room, making us go out and occupy our time together. And we spent a lot of time, the 3 of us, figuring it out, going fishing together, arguing, swimming in the lake together, Lake Michigan, that is. And I think those things, being committed to a social good, taking responsibility for yourself, planning, negotiating, and solving problems together, all of those things were important. I would say one other thing. My parents, yes, they did. Ron likes to always complain about putting the report cards on the refrigerator, which is the first thing you saw coming into the house, just because mine was good. But my parents were not, they didn't try to script us. Oh, you're really good at sports. You'll do the sports. You're a debater. You focus on debate and then go to law school. We were not stars in high school. I did well, but no one said when they graduated, oh, those Emmanuel boys, they are going to all succeed and they're going to be fantastic and you're going to hear their names. Or even after college, we were late bloomers. It took a while to figure it out. Partly because we tried lots of different things. I was on the swim team. I was on the cross country team. I did debate in high school. I didn't do any of that in college. I did something else in college.
A lot of swings at bat. Yeah.
Yes. And we have a lot of data that over focus early in life is not good for the best athletes. The best athletes are not the people who you train right from the start. Now, obviously, if you're Tiger Woods and at 3 years old, you're fantastic, or you're Mozart and you're playing the piano at 3 years old, that's 1 in 50 billion people.
They're freaks of nature to begin with.
Exactly, they're freaks. But for most of us, doing a lot of different things actually builds a lot of different skills, and that cognitive reserve we were talking about before.
Yeah, Range by David Epstein, wonderful book.
Yes, exactly.
I love where you land the book, which is to say that these simple rules for healthy living all complement each other, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they all feed each other in a way, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
They're about getting the right lifestyle and just making it a habit and then focusing on all the other things. I think the other important thing, if the book can be criticized, and I at least have one daughter who criticizes me all the time, she said, you don't mention having a purpose in life larger than yourself, outside of yourself. And I think that's woven in. And one of the people I quote, and this is for you, Rufus, is Ben Franklin about this. So Franklin, he lived to 84 years old. We all know him for inventing bifocals. And let me tell you one thing. He invented those when he was 79 years old. This is a guy who was productive, inventive all the way to the end. And what drove him, there are many things that drove him, but there were three in particular. Curiosity. He was endlessly curious about the world. What causes this? When the first balloon ride went up, he happened to be in Paris and saw it. And someone next to him said, what use is that? And he said, what use is a new baby? That's just fascinating. That's, who knows where it's going, but it's like amazing. And then he believed in moral growth. He knew he wasn't perfect. He knew he had flaws. He knew he had prejudices. He writes about his prejudices a lot, but he was always trying to improve himself.
Yeah.
And the last thing, which I think is the most important thing, is he had this idea of the most important thing in life is to be useful. And by useful, he meant, how am I improving the world? How can I make the world around me, my family, my community, the country I'm in, the world I'm in, better? He did it more than anyone we know, whether it's the lightning rod that saved so many houses from burning down, or bifocals, or he invented the urinary catheter for his brother who was having problems with a stone in his bladder. He was trying to constantly improve the world. And I think that is really about his purpose in life, his purpose. And most of us, our purpose is, how can we make things better? And that should be the focus. All this wellness stuff, that's just a means to that end. And I think that's really the takeaway, if I had to say it, from this book. How can you be useful? And how do you make a life that allows you to be as useful as possible?
I love it. Well, I'm glad you have a daughter to keep you humble. That's my sons are very good at that as well. There is a beautiful, virtuous cycle that can happen between all these practices. Engaging in better health, better relationships, and hopefully all this will make us incrementally more useful. Thank you, Zeke Emanuel, for being with us today.
Oh, it's been a great pleasure. This is a fabulous interview. Thank you so much for hosting me.
What's the use of a newborn baby? I have never heard that one. Have you heard that one before, Caleb?
No, that's a Ben Franklin anecdote that I had missed. We learned a lot of things from Zeke, and that's one of the great things.
He is a character, and I can just picture him flying through the streets of New York on his bicycle at 18 miles an hour, narrowly missing I-beams. I worry about him a little bit, Caleb. I think we need to send him a reflective vest or something.
That we do. I mean, I'm also just worried about this epidemic of I-beams. I don't encounter a lot of them when I'm out in the world walking my dog or riding my bike, but clearly in Zeke's neighborhood, it's lousy with I-beams.
Apparently.
A moment I have to say that gave me a lot of joy, Rufus, was when he really poo-pooed your love of the Oura Ring. Did he change your mind about that at all? Or I think I can still see the ring on your finger in this video, so I think I know the answer.
I sense that you were relishing that, Caleb, and I'm glad that was fun for you. I am sticking with my obsessive compulsive health tracking, though I acknowledge that it's not for everyone. But here's the case I'll make. I think this is a category that's only going to become more useful over time. We're going to be tracking more health metrics in years to come, and improving AI will see patterns that will be increasingly kind of exciteful, maybe predictive of what's coming. So I think as a sort of tech geek and data geek, I find it to be a fascinating and interesting and increasingly potentially rewarding area of interest.
What's next for you? Like, what's the next wearable that you want? What's the next metric you'd like to be able to track?
I'm a big baby when it comes to needles. At the tender age of 58, I'm still really afraid of needles. So once we can get, as you remember, I used a glucose monitor for a week in preparation for the Casey Meets conversation, which was fascinating, actually. I learned a lot. I think that using a continuous glucose monitor for a week did make some permanent changes to my eating habits. Just watching sugar levels spike dramatically after just like 2 bites of a croissant or something, and noticing how the sequence of what you eat impacts how it affects your blood sugar levels. Like that's, I think part of what's going on for me, Caleb, is that I'm kind of inherently a bit skeptical of authority. And as a consequence, I need to see the data myself, right? So if someone says to me, Rufus, drink less wine, or Rufus, drink fewer croissants, I'm sort of, I have a rebellious response. But when I see the data in front of my eyes and see how it's affecting my body, I'm more likely to respond and make healthy choices.
Does sound like you've basically taken traveling to France off the table for the rest of your life. I mean, no croissants, no red wine. Like, there just would be nothing for you to do there.
Well, here's where Zeke and I agree. Like, the beauty of healthy habits is the joy of violating them. So
True that.
I'm all for like making spontaneous, delicious choices that are like off the plan.
All right, well, let's leave it there. Another good one in the books. Today's episode was produced by me, Caleb Bissinger. Sound designed by Mike Toda.
I'm Rufus Griscom. See you next week.